A couple of months ago, I did a video with three guys sharing their experience of what it's like going through the process of getting a vasectomy. In this video, I wanted to explore the flip side of that and see what it's like for a woman to go through the process of sterilization, what it's like going through the process, what it's like requesting one, and what are the social implications of that like. I spoke with three women and I enjoyed all three of the conversations. I found them really interesting. I learned a lot from them, and I hope you guys find them interesting as well. I tried to get more of a spread from across the world because I do think it's important to hear the experiences of people in different healthcare systems and in different cultures about the different frictions they experience. But I was only able to get people from North America and Europe. Hopefully in a future video we'll be able to hear more stories from around the world. But I hope you guys find these the stories of these three women really interesting, and without further ado, let's hear them. So I'm with Alex, and we're going to be talking about Alex's experience getting sterilized in Canada, right? You were in Canada when you got it done, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, yeah, before we go into the actual process, like what were your reasons? Like, why, as much as you want to share, obviously, and that goes for all of the questions. Like, what were your like reasons for getting it done?
Um, well, number one, I of course don't want to get pregnant. Um, but obviously you can use birth control for that. However, for me, when it came to birth control, I've tried the pill. I've tried, it's called a NuvaRing. I've tried the patch. So I've tried like various methods of birth control, and I felt that I just didn't do well on those health wise. And so I ended up going with an IUD.
Mm,
So that's something that's it's called an intrauterine device. So it's inserted inside of you, and it can last anywhere between 5 to 10 years.
mm,
And so for me, I had to actually get a copper IUD because when it comes to hormones, it would affect my migraines negatively and make them worse. It could make them more frequent. So I opted for something that didn't have any hormones in it. So it was a copper IUD, and it was just horrifically painful.
yeah, I've heard. Yeah.
Yeah, I had terrible cramps. My periods, my flow was like really heavy. I bled for like 4+ days sometimes. It was just an awful experience. And so that really pushed me because, like, I didn't want kids, and I didn't want to have to deal with this kind of birth control that was just so painful, and I didn't want to have to deal with, hormones and things like that. So I felt like sterilization was the best option for me.
Mm.
So yeah, that's why I opted for that. So
And if you don't mind me asking, you don't have to answer this, but what like age were you when you got it done?
when I had my procedure, so I got a bilateral salpingectomy, which is just technical medical terms for getting your tubes actually removed, not
Mm,
just tied, but they're
yeah.
gone. Um, so I was, it was in 2001. I got it done in May 2001. So I was 34 when when I got
And
it done.
yeah, and the reason I asked that is I did not ask that to expose you. The reason I asked that is because um like especially so I did like an equivalent version of this with guys getting vasectomies, right? And they had, and including myself, had different experiences about how much pushback we got from the people around us and society in general, and the system that you have to go through to get the procedure done, right?
Mhm.
um Now, I got no hard data for this, but just through my experience in talking to women, it seems like women get way more pushback in terms of this, in terms of like seeking sterilization, um, and generally, if you're younger, you get more pushback as well. So, what was your experience with like pushback, or people's reaction to you when you said you were going to get this done? Like, were you relatively open about it with your friends and family, or did you keep it sort of to yourself? Yeah, what was your experience around that?
Well, I definitely talked to my friends about it, and they were supportive. So I didn't really get any pushback from that.
Mm,
Even my bosses at the time knew that I wanted to get this done, and I was like trying to get it done and everything like that. So, and when it came to my parents, I just told them after the fact.
mm,
So I told my mom first, and she's always been like really supportive about whatever I really want to do, as long as I'm not harming myself or anything like that.
mm, mm.
She's supportive, so she was totally fine with it. My dad was definitely disappointed, because it was kind of that like final, like
Yeah, yeah.
I'm like never having kids, so he was like a little sad. I guess um, yeah, it was just like the reality hit. But
Mm,
he knew that I didn't want to have children, and like we've had that conversation, and we talked about adoption and fostering and things like that. So all of that kind of stuff came up. But I think just like realizing that it was, physically impossible now, kind of
yeah, yeah.
like was that really hard dose of reality for him. But otherwise, the people in my life that were close to me, I got full support from.
Mm,
And yeah, like for example, in Canada, this one particular doctor that I went to, so they're, I don't know, we call them family doctors, but they're basically like general practitioners, and they work at like clinics, and you just walk in, and sometimes you can, like get a regular doctor there as well. And but anyways, so one of them that I went to see in hopes of getting a referral told me that they usually look to see how old you are. So if you're usually like under 30 or between like 30 and 35, so like under below that age bracket, you're definitely like bumped down the list of priorities for this kind of like surgery. If you don't have children to
yeah.
begin with, they'll bump you down. If you're single, so unmarried, basically, that's what they look for. So yeah, that also bumps you down the priority list.
Mm,
So they have these like pretty ridiculous, arbitrary like reasons that they look at, to kind of deny you or just make you wait a really really long time for it.
mm.
So
So was that the main um I don't know if pushback is the right term, but like roadblock you hit in terms of getting it? It was just being relatively, because by the criteria you just mentioned, like it seems like you would be relatively low down the list. So was that the biggest roadblock, or was there anyone in the process that said, oh, I don't agree with you doing this, so I'm not going to do it? Because sometimes, it would be totally legal for you to get one, but the actual people who are supposed to enact it wouldn't agree for personal reasons. Did you ever have anything like that, or was it just you had to wait, and once you waited, it was fine?
yeah, no, I didn't have anyone who like verbalized that they just didn't want to do it for their own, ideological or like personal reasons.
Yeah.
So I never had that experience. For me, it was mostly just being denied because of the fact that I was unmarried. I was single and I already didn't have children. So I obviously fit the age range where they would like start considering it. But yeah,
Mm,
my referrals got denied by a lot of OBGYNs in Calgary. That's where I was at the time when I got the procedure, when I like started looking to get the procedure done. So, but yeah, I didn't get anyone who said that particularly. Like even the first male doctor that I went and saw for my referral, like he said like I'll put these through, but it's not likely that they're going to accept you.
mm. Yeah, I
And
had the same.
Yeah, but he never said anything like, "Oh, you shouldn't do it," or, they might not want to do it because of their own personal reasons. But based on the fact of like, because it took a while for me to finally get accepted. And so I was just reading things, like looking into why these like arbitrary markers and like reasons are in effect, kind of thing. And yeah,
Mm,
like even in Canada, like doctors can easily just deny you based on their own personal reasons for procedures, like even if it's like if you medically need this procedure, like let's say you have some sort of issue and like having a hysterectomy is something that would
mm.
alleviate your pain, they can still just say no because of their own like beliefs and stuff. So, but
That's mad.
yeah, but yeah, thankfully I didn't experience that. I just was, yeah, discriminated against because I don't have kids and because I'm not
Yeah,
married. And like I was still kind of like, I mean, I am young. I'm only 35, but yeah.
yeah, yeah. So how long did you have to wait on this between you know uh so okay, maybe let's back up. What actually is the procedure? So you've kind of hinted at different things, but or not procedure, but what is the process? So I'm assuming the first thing is you go to your local doctor and you say, I want to have this done. And then what is the process from there?
From there, they have to put in what's called a referral. So they'll send your information, what procedure you want done, and they'll send it to all like the OBGYNs or,
Mm,
whatever other kind of thing you're looking to get done. Um, and so they'll send that referral out, and basically whoever, like doctors are able to accept it or deny it. And so that's like what the process is basically. So
yeah.
the first doctor that I went to, he was like, yeah, no problem, I'll send it. And then I never heard anything back for, I think it was probably like a month. And so I called that doctor. I was like, "Hey, what's going on?" And he's like, "Oh, well, if you haven't heard back, it means they just like haven't like accepted your referral." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Okay, well, like, can you send it again? Can you send it to other doctors? Like, whatever." And he was like, "Yeah, but they're probably not going to accept you." And then it was also kind of during COVID and stuff, so there was that ridiculousness that
Mm,
affected it as well. So then yeah, he said he sent it. He said he sent another referral out, but I'm not 100% sure if he did because, like, I have no way of actually double checking that.
yeah.
So at this point, I was like kind of getting frustrated because I think probably like a couple months had gone by, and I was like, hey, I want to like hear something back. Like, this is kind of ridiculous, you know? And so I put something out on Facebook, and um, one of like someone that I knew recommended her doctor, her kind of like general practitioner, family doctor. And so I called and just made an appointment there, and yeah, I let her know like what I wanted to do,
Mm,
and she was the one who was like, yeah, like it's going to be like really challenging, but she was like understanding and like willing to,
mm,
just have like an open conversation with me, an open discussion about it. But she said, she's like, it's probably going to take a while for someone to accept you. And like the number one reasons are because you are like, you don't have children, you're not
mm.
married, um, you're 34, like, um, there's a lot of doctors that just won't do that. Um,
So
they,
what So, like, you go to the doctor, you get a referral, it then gets sent off, and then you have to wait for, like some length of time, depending on who you are, um, and then obviously, eventually, you got accepted. So, when a clinic or whatever you refer to them as accepts you, like, what is the process then? You get accepted. Do you then have to have like a consultation so they can make sure you're sure and stuff, or?
Yeah, so once I got accepted by like an actual OBGYN that would do the surgery, I went in for my consultation, and he only asked me once. He's like, "You're 100% sure you want to do this?" And I was like, "Yep." I was like, "I'm 1,000% sure. Like, I'm excited that I'm here." And he was like, "Okay." And then he just went over the procedure. And so yeah, he went over the procedure, if there's any like risks involved with the actual surgery, anything like that. And then they put me on a surgery wait list. And then I just wait for a phone call from them to let me know that I got the appointment at the
Mm.
hospital, basically. So,
And
um,
how long were you on that wait list?
so the surgery wait list was around 6 months.
Oh, whoa. Oh, right. Oh, okay.
Hmm. Yeah.
That's very long. I don't. Do you think that's just for that procedure, or is that just a general sort of thing in Canadian healthcare system?
It's kind of just a general thing. You have to wait a long time to
Yeah.
to get like certain surgeries, certain procedures. Like even to get an MRI or like a CT scan, you sometimes you wait up to a year to get that appointment.
Because I think I was relatively lucky because I got mine uh like when we were first coming out of like the lockdowns in the UK.
Mhm.
And so what had happened is everyone that had been scheduled for one during the lockdowns had obviously been pushed until lockdown ends. But then because we just finished lockdown basically around that time, a lot of people were not comfortable going in.
Mhm.
Because even though the restrictions legally had been lifted, people were still like, I don't know, socially anxious, or just still scared or whatever. And so a lot of people weren't doing their appointments, and so there was basically just like loads of free space. So I basically just like slid on in there and got mine done straight away. So I was like super lucky. I got in there whilst there was a gap. But
Nice.
that's like yeah, that's kind of shit that you had to wait
Mhm.
6 months. So you wait like the amount of time, and then uh it's like you have the day of the procedure. Like, like, how were you feeling and stuff like that, and what was the actual procedure like? Do you go under general anesthetic and all of that sort of stuff? How long does it take,
Mhm.
etc., etc.?
Well, I was really excited the
Yeah.
day of my procedure. Like even when they called me to book my initial consultation, I was just like, it was an amazing moment for me. I was so excited. And so yeah, the day of the procedure, I had nothing but excitement. I wasn't really
Mm,
nervous. I don't really like have a big fear of going under general um, anesthesia or anything like that. So yeah, I just got dropped off at the hospital, and then they got me ready. It's just a day surgery, so I was home by like 4 or 5 o'clock that day. Um,
how long does the actual thing take? Are we talking half an hour, an hour, a couple of
yeah,
hours?
something like that. Because they use like a laser, and like it's still like an incision, but like when they
Yeah.
go in, they yeah, it's like I think it's like a laser, so
Yeah.
it's not as invasive as like as it could be, or
Mm,
as it used to be. So so yeah, it's a quick procedure. For me, the worst part of the day was just waking up from the general anesthesia, and usually I don't have like bad reactions or anything to it, but I just got really nauseous. I was really sick, so that was the worst part of the
mm,
whole day, was just that. And then in terms of recovery, for me personally, it took about 3 days until I could feel like pretty normal. And by the fifth day, I was totally fine. But yeah, it definitely, you're definitely sore for a little bit, and
mm.
everyone's different, obviously. But yeah, for me, I was pretty sore the first day. I could only sleep on my back. Um, the first couple days was basically just kind of like laying down
Yeah,
on my
chilling.
back or
Yeah, yeah.
just like sitting up, or standing basically, because anything else was just like really painful.
Yeah.
Um, but you're not like totally out where you can't take care of yourself, or if you have to take care of like a companion animal, or you're not out that badly, but it's
Yeah,
definitely a
yeah.
more invasive procedure for sure. I have three incision marks, two on my abdomen right here, and then
Mm,
one in my belly button, but they're very small, and like it seems like over time they're just gonna kind of get smaller and smaller, and you probably
yeah.
won't see them after a while.
So you were saying, I think you said it took like 5 days until you felt relatively
Hmm.
normal.
Yeah.
So like, how long would you say? Like, I don't know if you run, but like, let's say you wanted to go on like a run, right? Like just a standard run around, casual run. Like, how long do you think after it you'd be able to do something like that?
Probably a week to go on like an actual run, I would say.
Oh wow, that's I'm surprised. That's like even that's quicker than a vasectomy. Um, well, again, with vasectomies, everyone's different, but like, um, with a vasectomy, like you're not supposed to be like you definitely wouldn't go on a run in the few days afterwards. Um, and like I have a friend who recently just got his, and he recovered like really quickly. I was really surprised. He recovered way quicker than me, and I thought I recovered like pretty fine. And he was doing sport pretty soon after. For some reason, like, um actually don't know if this is factually true anymore, given the advancements in technology.
Mhm.
But my understanding is that, like for women, it is more invasive than for men. So I just assumed that it would take longer to recover, but it actually, I don't know. Maybe you just had a miraculous recovery and you're like some sort of superwoman or whatever. But like,
No,
I
no.
I thought it would take longer.
Mm-mm. No, like there's other women out there who have recovered way faster than me too. So
Oh wow,
there's some that are like that don't even really like feel as much
yeah,
soreness and things like that. Um,
yeah,
so yeah, for me, like I've read on the child free, and like I was in part of in some tubular ligation groups on Facebook as well. And yeah, like some people recover really quickly. Um, but if you were to get something like a hysterectomy, that's
mm,
when it would take like a lot longer. Then you're in the
yeah.
hospital for a lot longer, because then you're taking out like a big,
Yeah,
like you're
yeah, yeah,
taking
the whole
a big
womb, yeah, yeah.
organ basically, right? So
Yeah, yeah.
um, so yeah, but yeah, it's not too bad. Like it is definitely more invasive, but yeah, I guess like our recovery is a little bit easier than your guys's. So
Yeah. So, and again, I don't expect you to know like the full answer to this.
Mhm.
And I'm like definitely showing my ignorance now. But like, do you know what the different did you have different options presented to you? So you said that you got like the tubes removed, right? Instead of like what other options are there? Obviously you can have a full hysterectomy, but that's like more um you know like substantial. You had the tubes removed. Like, what are there other options that you were presented with, or generally exist?
yeah, so I went with, so it's you could do, usually now they just go for the bilateral salpingectomy,
Mm,
just because then it helps with um, ectopic pregnancies, and then also certain forms of cancer too that develop, in the womb and things like that,
mm,
uterus. Um, so yeah, usually they just go with the bilateral salpingectomy, which is just the complete removal of the tubes. There's also a tubule ligation, which is essentially when they either like clip your tubes,
yeah.
or they just like snip them in half and then they sear them basically.
Yeah, but they don't remove like a section.
No, and that could like that could result in them kind of reconnecting again. And
It's the same with vasectomies. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, so that's why they usually like will go for just having your tubes completely removed. And
Mm,
so when with that, there's only been I think two or three women who have gotten pregnant after getting a bilateral salpingectomy. So it's
mm,
definitely out of all those options that involve just the fallopian tubes, it's the most effective. Um, so yeah, and then there's also, of course, you can get like a hysterectomy where it's just the removal of your uterus. So it doesn't have anything to do with like your fallopian tubes or
mm.
your ovaries, but then also you can get that as well, have those removed, and that's called, I think, like a full hysterectomy. Or no, sorry, that's not a full hysterectomy. That's I can't remember the exact name of that, but
Yeah, yeah.
anyways, that's an option. So like yeah, there's different kinds of hysterectomies. The most invasive one that usually you only get if you have cancer would be like having your uterus, your tubes, and your ovaries removed, and sometimes your cervix and some of your vagina as well. So like the top of your vagina. So
Oh,
yeah,
whoa! I didn't realize they could be that extensive.
yeah, that's
Um,
usually only for like
like
cancer.
yeah, like there's an extreme medical sort of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh, whoa, that's mad.
Mhm.
Um, yeah. So do you like maybe you've already said it, but and it slipped my mind. Did you say there was a specific reason that you got the type you got, or was it just the one that was it just like the default one that was offered to you?
No, that was I got it because it was the most effective
Okay.
form of like tubular ligation. Um, and it's obviously like very permanent. If you just get your tubes clipped, I'm pretty sure you can have that reversed, but it's not 100% guaranteed, and then you usually pay for it. So in Canada, my procedure was covered through my provincial health care that's offered.
Mm, yeah.
So I didn't have to pay for anything, which was really nice. Um, and then, yeah, obviously I originally only took 3 days off work, but the procedure was midweek. So I ended up having the weekend to recover as well. So then I only missed like a few days of work.
Yeah,
So,
yeah, yeah.
yeah.
And do you have any regrets at all about? And I asked this in two ways. Do you have any regrets about getting it, and or do you have any regrets about the manner in which you got it? So, for example, would you have done something differently at all? Um,
So I don't regret being sterilized whatsoever. I wish I would have done it so much sooner. I could have saved.
Literally, everyone says that.
I would have saved myself so much like pain and suffering when it comes to having to deal with birth control and stuff like
Mm,
that. Because I knew like I didn't want kids to like you know why not go all the way. Um,
yeah, yeah.
and my only
Balls to the wall or not?
exactly right. Go big or go home. So, but my biggest regret is not looking into different types of sterilization more beforehand,
Mm,
because I hate my period. I hate having a menstrual cycle. It sucks. It's especially useless because I don't want to have kids. Like I just a bodily function that like I absolutely hate.
yeah.
And so I wish that I would have gone with a hysterectomy where it just removes um, the uterus and that's it, leaves everything else intact. Because then I wouldn't have gotten a period anymore. And that would have been great. And that's also 100% effective as well. And if anything, I probably would have gone with getting my fallopian tubes removed as well, just
Mm,
in case. And that would eliminate the risk of like an ectopic pregnancy, which is when like the egg and the sperm, like embryo, the zygote, whatever, implants in your fallopian tube instead of like
Mm.
your uterus. So yeah.
And so apart from looking at different options, like you just said, would you have any? So say there's there's like a woman who's watching this, and maybe they're in Canada or they're in another part of the world where the healthcare system is like relatively similar.
Mhm.
Would you have any advice for them or tips or anything like that?
Um, I guess like really figure out what your needs are and what your wants are. Like I said, I wish I would have gone for a hysterectomy, but I'm still happy with like like I am 1,000% happy with my procedure, and
Mm.
I'm happy to have it. I just wish, yeah, I would have like gotten rid of my period while I was doing this
Yeah,
too.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so yeah, just make sure like figure out what your needs and your wants are. And my biggest piece of advice is just be really confident when you go and talk to your doctors. Um, you know, be armed with as much information. Like if they ask you questions about the procedure that you're getting or that you want, you know what it is. You've looked up if there's any risks, anything like that, so that they can see, what you're talking about, what you're doing. Like you're doing this because you want to, not, you know, for any other reason. So
Yeah, yeah.
so yeah, just having that confidence and knowledge, to advocate for yourself is really, 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 really important, and not just for this kind of procedure, but just really anything, that you need done within like a healthcare setting. It's important to advocate for yourself as strongly as possible. So be educated, be confident, and don't take no for an answer, basically. Just keep trying,
Mm.
don't give up. There will be a doctor out there that will accept you. You might just have to wait a while, unfortunately. So,
Yeah, and I get because like in the UK, I'm not exactly sure what stage you would do this at, but like how we work is you're associated with one specific clinic. Whereas it sounds like for you, you were able to like shop around, like you got a recommendation from your friend or whatever. So
yeah.
yeah, if you can do that in your country, I guess that's like a
Hmm.
bit of advice as well, right? To
Yeah.
maybe ask on online forums or whatever, for if anyone is in, hey, is anyone in my country that's had this done before? Do they have a doctor they can recommend or something like that? Because
Yeah.
that's how you found your one, right?
Yeah, exactly. And the only thing that kind of sucks with that, is that every time you go to a new clinic and speak to a new doctor, you're going to have to go through the whole process of like filling out all the paperwork
Yeah,
and,
yeah,
having like going in for like an initial consultation, telling them about your like medical history, things like that. I mean, they have access to information as well too. Um, like within the provincial like database, health database, whatever. But still, you have to like go through that process. So it's kind of annoying, and it's an extra step, but it's worthwhile to have the option to actually be able to see different doctors, go to different clinics. So in like in Canada, they're called walk-in clinics. So you can literally like walk in and just talk to a doctor,
mm,
but you would fill out that paperwork initially. So
mm.
yeah.
If anyone wants to like keep up with you, is there anywhere like public that people can do that?
Yeah, they can go to my YouTube channel. That's, Free to Animals. And then on Twitter as well, but it's spelt differently on Twitter.
I'll link it all in the
Yeah,
description so that
yeah,
people, yeah, so that people don't have to fuck around with.
yeah. And then if anyone wants to email me, my email is, on my YouTube as well. And then I'm
Cool.
on Instagram, but not on there like super often. I post a lot of all kinds of stuff on there too. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I can get all the links from you, and any you want to be in the description, I'll put in so that people can just like quickly get them there. But Yeah, I mean, if there's nothing else that you wanna, any final words you wanna put in, it's been like, I've this is the first time I've actually spoken to anyone about this, so I've like learned quite a lot.
Nice. Sweet.
So it's been like really interesting for me. But yeah,
Cool.
thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So I've got Sarah here with me now, and Sarah is in Luxembourg, originally from France, but actually got her sterilization in Germany. So before we get into all of that, I just want to start like right at the start, which is like, why did you get a sterilization? What were your sort of main reasons driving you to get it?
I think the main one is I'm child free. I don't want kids ever. And so it was kind of like an escalation. You know, you start like with condoms, the pill. I kind of struggled to get an IUD, got that, had some issues with that as well.
Mm,
And like the logical progression was just the permanent solution. Part of it was also I wanted to be sure that, you know, social pressure, whatever, it would never become an issue later. Like, I was sure of my decision and I know I won't regret it, so I decided to just go with it. The other one was, I had been looking into it for a couple years at that time, but then Roe versus Wade got overturned. So I know that's in the US and I'm not in the US, but in the EU, we got Poland who's having issues
mm,
around, you know, abortion and women's rights. In Luxembourg, actually, abortions got legalized like 7 years ago. So not that long ago, actually. I think Germany is technically abortions are illegal, but tolerated under some circumstances, and all the delays, you know, deadlines to get the abortions in Europe are pretty short. So I was kind of worried that if I didn't do it now, I would not be legally allowed to do it in the future. And to me, it was like I want the peace of mind, so I'm just
mm.
gonna do it.
Yeah, no, I get that. That's kind of sensible actually. And I hadn't actually thought of that before. The second thing you said about how there could be some sort of time pressure on when to get it because you don't know when the political situation is going to change. Which, yeah, I hadn't actually thought of that. That hadn't come to mind, but that's a good point. You said like in your first part about like social pressures later in life. Did you mean something along the lines of like, you may meet someone and then they may want to have a kid and they may sort of like, you may sort of get swept away by sort of like emotion and their sort of social pressure. Is that what you meant, or am I like misinterpreting that?
My original thought was you always get told about, you know, oh, the biological clock, like it's gonna start
Mm,
ticking at some point, like some magical switch is gonna go off in your brain, and suddenly, like, you're gonna want a baby or something. And so I started really wanting a procedure about 2 years ago, and I had to write like a letter to the doctor. That was I have a bunch of other stuff I had to do, but I had to write a letter to the doctor explaining why I wanted one,
mm,
like to cover his butt, I guess. And I came out with like 11 pages of reason I didn't want a kid, and some of it was like, yeah, I since found out that like the whole biological clock thing is a hoax. Like it's not true. It's just social pressure and, you know, fear of missing out and things like that. It's not like hormones are gonna bamboozle you when you're hit 35 or something and you're gonna want a kid. But yeah, the whole like making the decision now and just not having to in the future wonder like, oh, you know, maybe this guy or oh something like, no, I
mm.
know I don't want kids. I don't want the option to be open anymore.
Yeah. No, I get you. So you kind of mentioned a bit already about the process about writing a letter to a doctor, but before we get on
Hmm.
that, do you mind sharing how old you were when you actually got the procedure done?
So I got it last year. I was 30.
Okay, cool. And just for the benefit of like anyone listening, the reason I ask that is because in a lot of countries, and I had a vasectomy a few years ago. I can't remember exactly when, but yeah, I was ready to face, you know, like resistance because I was quite young when I got mine, right? So I think when it comes to this sort of
Mhm.
thing, age is quite important because it will somewhat determine how much pushback you get. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, so like having said that, so what actually is the process of um getting a so you got, as you called it, a buy sell. Um
Yeah.
so what is the process of getting what so why did you get it in Germany, and what was the process of getting it?
So originally, when I moved to Luxembourg, I started looking into in Luxembourg. Turns out it's a pretty Catholic country,
Mm,
and so my doctor here told me he made me like wait around for about 6 months. I wrote the letter for him, and he was pretty open about it. He didn't like bingo me or anything. He was fairly understanding. But then he came back to me about 6 months later and said, I talked to my lawyer, and he says I shouldn't be doing this. Like even if you sign a waiver or something, like we can't do this here. They consider it like mutilation.
oh
And
right.
I cried when he told me that. I was like, what the fuck?
uh
So then I looked, that was about 2 or 3 years ago. I looked into it then in France because that's where I'm from, and like the logistics were too complicated in France. I found a doctor who was fine with it as well, but he was about 4 or 5 hour drive away,
mm,
so that was complicated because you have to go a few days before for like the anesthesiologist consult because like they put you under. You
yeah,
can't just like walk like just show up and walk out. So and then I wasn't sure like driving 4 or 5 hours afterwards, even with my partner driving, if I would be up to it, stuff like that.
yeah.
So I had the preliminary consult with him, and then he said in France you have to wait. You have a mandatory like reflection period of 4 months. So I
Oh
was fine with
really?
that. I waited the 4 months. Yeah, yeah. But the doc was cool about it. I waited the 4 months, and then when I tried to get in touch with him again, he had changed hospitals, and he had never sent me like the quote, like for the estimate for the costs
Mm,
because in Luxembourg it's not covered at all. I I had to pay out of pocket, so I just wanted to be able to budget. I had no
yeah,
idea how much it would cost to have like a surgery and stay in the hospital like for like a half a day or a day, and I was like, what is this, like 1,000, like 5,000? I had no idea. So I just wanted to be able to, to budget for that. And then like around that time, my partner actually got his vasectomy. So
oh, so
I kind of,
you're like double safe.
yeah. Oh God. Yeah. 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 And, so I was like, okay, he's getting his done. It's really cool. I still have the IUD. Like, um, I'm a little bit more comfortable for now to just kind of see what happens and I still wanted it, but I wasn't actively looking into it anymore.
Mm,
And then we got those issues, like the political issues,
yeah,
and I got really scared because we don't we don't want to stay our whole lives here. We don't know where we'll end up. He's American, so if we ever move to the US and you like over there the problem does exist. So I was like, okay, I want to get this done now, and then if we ever travel, if there's ever like I'll be safe. If they don't allow birth control,
mm,
like pills or IUDs or whatever, I'm protecting myself. So I started looking again, and this time I looked at doctors closer to Luxembourg, and I found one who was in Germany, who was about 40 minutes away, an hour away, roughly. Um, so I set up the first consult with him, and basically I was sterilized like exactly a month later. So it was very short. There was no waiting period in Germany, no side key valves, nothing like that. I had
mm,
so the first consult, like the first appointment where he ever saw me, because I had never met the doctor before. Um, there was a bit of a language barrier because I thought he would be speaking English a little bit because Germans usually speak English pretty
yeah.
well, in my experience, compared to French people, if I can say that. And he actually does not speak English at all. So my German was quite rusty. I speak a little bit of German, and we were
Yeah.
able to get along with that.
Well,
So
at least it
he
didn't go so wrong that he ended up removing a leg or something.
yes, right. Like, and I'm proud of myself. Like, I got sterilized in a foreign country where I don't really speak the language. I'm proud
Yeah,
of
yeah.
myself.
So, what?
And
Sorry, sorry to interrupt. So, you were saying before that you were, didn't know like how much it was going to cost, and you wanted to budget.
yeah,
How much did it end up costing in Germany?
so it was $600, sorry, euros, 600
Yeah,
euros
yeah,
for
yeah.
the surgeon. That I paid like the day of the surgery, like right after, like when I came out of the hospital, I paid him.
Mm.
And then it was the hospital bill that I got several months later was under 400. I think it was like 380 something.
Okay, so it was
So under a
around a
thousand.
thousand. Yeah, overall. Okay, cool.
Yeah, a little bit under. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. So I met with him. He had a couple questions for me, but he wasn't too pushy. I think it's kind of fair to ask a couple questions, right? Like
yeah. It's
it's still a
standard
surgery, and
practice. Yeah,
yeah, I think he asked me, uh, what if you what if you meet someone who wants kids, or
classic.
what if your partner changes his mind? And I was like, well, I'll be leaving then.
Yeah,
And like my
yeah,
current
exactly. Like
partner
he changes
has a
his
vasectomy,
mind.
so
Yeah.
like he's yeah, like so it's not an issue. Like he might change his mind about staying with me, but it doesn't look like he's going to change his mind about having kids. And he was like, oh, but like if he has like a vasectomy, why do you want to get sterilized? Like he had it done. Like this is more invasive. Why do you want this? Like because I can still get pregnant. I don't want to
Mm.
be able to get pregnant. So and he was fine with that. Um, so yeah, I went back. I think one more time just to get like so he did an ultrasound that first time, and then I went back for like the slip, to have time off work. And I went to the hospital like and signed forms, and yeah, I signed the forms like about the procedure and the surgery and what it was and what it did, because like I mean I know what it did, but you have
Mm.
to sign all the paperwork. And then I just went to the hospital to have like book the I guess the room, um, the date, like the have the medical questionnaire for the
Mm.
surgery. The COVID test was still a thing when I did it, and
Oh
that
yeah.
was the Friday. That was the Friday, and then the Monday I went back in at like 7 a.m. or something, and
Mm.
I was out by noon.
Okay, so
I don't know if
okay,
you
so,
want the details of that.
yeah.
It was a half
Well,
day.
yeah, 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 yeah. And you were saying before that you're under like general anesthetic, so you completely go under.
Yeah.
Um, and what what was it just like? Obviously, only share as much as you're comfortable sharing with, but can you give us like a bit of a flavor of like what it was like on the day? Like, how were you feeling? Were you nervous? Were you excited? When you came back, back out of being under anesthetic, what was that like? Yeah, just that general stuff.
I was terrified, like not of the consequences of doing
Mm,
this or changing my mind or something. I was terrified because I'm scared of hospitals and doctors.
yeah.
Uh, so that was part of the reason why it took me also a little while, between my first research into it and then deciding to actually go for it, because I was like, oh well, I've never had surgery. That was my first surgery ever in my life. So I was a little scared of like, okay, but anesthesia, how does that work? Like,
Mm,
how? What if I wake up during? What if I feel something? How do you feel after? And I was afraid of like, having a catheter, like being intubated, all that fun stuff that goes on during surgery. And it's just a little, it's not something, I don't like medical stuff. So that
mm.
was a little kind of cringy almost in my brain. I didn't like it. And actually they thought I had like the flu or COVID, because I was so scared I was having like hot flashes.
Oh.
And they thought I had a fever, and I was like, no, no, I'm just like, I'm just super stressed.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
And they were quite nice about it. No, like the general anesthesia is really funny because it's like you don't even realize they give it to you. So I was chatting with I guess the anesthesiologist,
Mm.
and just chatting, and then I opened my eyes and I was in a different room, and I was like, wait, it's the operating room? And I looked at the clock and I was like, it's like 9:30. This is late. It hurts a little bit.
That's so
Oh,
weird.
oh, I guess I'm done then. It's super weird, and I think I kept losing some time. for about
Yeah.
an hour, but not like in a stressful way. Just like, oh, I'm in a different room again. Huh. Okay. And it was really good. I don't think I was intubated or cathed or anything because I didn't really feel anything after, like
Mm.
any soreness or anything like that. They just make sure like you can walk
Mm.
after, and you can go to the bathroom because just in case like you have any issues with your bladder or anything. And yeah, I was discharged. I think at around like 12:30, something like that.
Yeah, so that's like a
Um,
completely different experience to than for guys, because like you go under general anesthetic, but guys just have local, so we're
mhm.
awake for the whole time. And I guess you'd know
Yeah,
this from your
yeah,
partner, but
yeah,
yeah, it's I got to tell you, it's all sorts of weird to be awake while someone is operating down there. Like it's it's another
yeah.
level.
He told me.
Yeah, it's a really odd feeling.
Yeah, I can see
Um,
that.
yeah. But
Um,
I get that like general anesthetic also comes with its own risks. So I prefer that I was awake, I think, because it just reduces the risks. At least from my knowledge. Like
mhm,
I'm not a medical expert or anything. And it was just going back to what you were saying before about one of the things that like prompted you to get it done when you got it done was like the changing political situation, or the
mhm,
prospect of you being in a different situation later where you maybe it wouldn't be an option.
mhm.
And it made me think, this just like odd thought popped into my head because I've been watching some like TV series and films recently with set in like post-apocalyptic zombie sort of scenario, and like
Yes, exactly. Like you don't know.
no, no, no. Like, obviously, that is not going to happen. Like, obviously, we're not going to be in a post-apocalyptic with zombies going around. But I was thinking while I was watching them, I was like, you know, it would be so convenient that if I was in this situation in a zombie apocalypse, I would have already had it done, so I'd have nothing to worry about. Whereas everyone else there, they wouldn't have access to modern contraception, and like I
I
mean,
You're
who
also
would
supposed
think
to
it's
get.
a
I mean,
sorry?
I get your point. I get your point
Mm,
because, like, in the current situation, I know guys who got baby trapped, which is horrible.
mm,
In a zombie apocalyptic type world, it's like, well, you can just leave, right? There's not going to be a judge or something that's going to make you stay, and as a guy, theoretically. But
no,
I
no,
mean,
no,
yeah, I don't
no.
think there's going to be a zombie apocalypse. But it's like, yeah,
Yeah.
if you get pregnant as a woman, like, and you can't abort anymore because you're past the super short time span you have, like,
Mm,
what do you do?
yeah,
Like,
you're
sure, you can
fucked.
put the kid up for adoption or something, but like, if you don't want to get pregnant and don't want to give birth, like, you're fucked. Like,
Mm,
congrats, this is your life now,
yeah,
and you
yeah.
get to think about it every day for like 9 months or 8 months or however long there's left.
Mm.
And
Yes.
yeah, and I also realized that like two weird things I realized also is that Luxembourg, funnily enough, so you know how I don't know how it is in the UK. In France and Luxembourg, typically birth control is more or less covered by Social Security, like like the government healthcare. So you don't really, depending on what you have, you don't really pay or they reimburse you.
Mm,
Luxembourg only does it until you're 30. So it's like, it does feel a lot like, oh, you're 30 now, you had your fun, but chop chop, get me those babies now.
mm,
And I kind of don't like that mentality. I was like, well, I'm 30 now, I'm going to get sterilized. I win.
mm.
And I also realized that in the US, in the US, they have this whole debate, on the deadline, for abortions. It's like, oh, it's
Yeah.
8 weeks, 10 weeks, 12 weeks. And they're kind of freaking out over some states going down to like 8 weeks or something. And it's like,
Mm,
actually, that's kind of the standard in Europe. And when you think about it, it's really short. And I've always been terrified of, just missing it for whatever reason. And then it's like,
mm,
oh, it's too late. And you're forced to go through with it. Even if like, if I think about it, I would be suicidal if I
mm.
had to do that. So yeah, like no matter what happens now, um, women's rights, whatever, at least I won't get pregnant.
Yeah.
Like, it might be horrible in other ways, but at least I won't have that. So
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
a
yeah.
weight off my mind.
What was your recovery like afterwards? How long did it take for you to from the point of actually having the surgery to
Mhm.
you're back to normal, you can do whatever you want? How long did that take?
The doctor gave me 2 weeks off work. I felt like the first week I definitely wasn't 100%.
Mm.
Um, but like it's hard to explain. I think I so they do it laparoscopically. That's the right word. Like with a camera, they don't open you up all the
Yeah, it's
way, like
keyhole,
for like a
keyhole.
C-section or yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So they actually, I didn't know that. Well, I mean, I knew right before, but I didn't know like a couple of years ago. But so
Mm.
they actually inject some gas in your abdomen, like to make it like a balloon a little bit, so they have more room
Oh.
with the instruments to like cut.
Oh, right, yeah. I
And
didn't
they
know that.
can't get it. Yeah, and then they can't get it all out completely, and so some people have pain from the gas. So I didn't
Yeah.
actually have pain from the like at the incision sites. So they go through the belly button and like around like your basically where your underwear would be, like the line
Yeah.
by your hip bones. I didn't have pain from those, but I did have pain from the gas. I think the theory is so it presses on your diaphragm and it irritates. I had trouble breathing, like taking deep breaths was weird, and it
Mm.
irritated it irritates the nerves in your shoulders and neck. So I had some shoulder pain. The first day was okay. I think it was just that the drugs from the actual surgery just were still in my system, so I was fine. I had no
Mm.
prescription drugs. I don't know how that works for you guys. I had some paracetamol, uh, like the normal setting you can get like over the counter. It wasn't very
Mm.
strong. The second day, I had it fluctuated. It came and went. I had some shoulder pain that was pretty bad for a couple, like maybe 10, 20 minutes throughout the day overall. So it's not that bad. I would definitely do it again. It wasn't excruciating. I mean, it felt really bad at one point, but it passed pretty
Mm.
quickly. And then it was more trying to figure out, how to sleep comfortably because I'm a stomach sleeper. So,
Yeah, me too.
you know,
Which loads of people
yeah, it's a
find
little,
weird.
yeah. So that was a little awkward, but yeah, I felt fine, maybe like 70-80% within the first few days, and then went back to work after the 2 weeks were up. Felt fine. I
Mm.
felt like a twinge every now and then, like in my like the lower incision, but nothing really painful. It's more like, oh, I've never had surgery before. Is this normal? What is this? But
Mm.
like no complications. Everything like scarred really well. Like the healed up really well. No problems at all.
Yeah, that's really odd about the gas. I didn't know that. I mean, it makes sense that they would need more room to like move the instruments and stuff around. But yeah, it never occurred to me. That's interesting. So like we've gone through like the physical sort of process in your recovery and stuff, but what was it like the social side of it? Like who did you tell that you were getting this done? Who have you told since? What were their reactions? Yeah, what was that like?
Um, Basically, all my friends know. They knew like before I was going to get it that I was going to get it,
Mm.
and I've updated them since I got it. So all of them know. Obviously, my partner knows because he drove me and drove me back. And I mean, he's sterilized, so
Mm.
like he can't not be supportive, right? He was fine with it, obviously.
Yeah, yeah.
Um, like if not that it comes up very often, but I don't feel too weird talking about it at work if it ever came up. I
Mm.
think I have one or two colleagues who know about it. I don't really care. I'm not afraid of discrimination or anything like that or judgments. I mean, I also don't like. Yeah, it doesn't bother me.
Mm.
I don't go around like yelling about it either. But if we have discussions around that kind of topic or children or something, I don't mind being like, actually, no, I don't have kids, or oh, you sure? You like maybe later. I'm like, actually, no, because I got sterilized, so I'm not gonna have any ever or stuff like that. But
Mm.
all very good. And didn't like all my friends were super supportive. One of them thought it was really cool because she's like, oh, I want kids and everyone's pushing me to have kids, but I'm older now and I feel like it's good to see you being so happy not wanting them because like it gives me hope that even if I don't have them, I'll be okay. and
Mm.
I thought that was really nice. My family doesn't know. Oddly enough, my mother-in-law knows. But I think maybe my aunt knows. I think I kind of hinted once that I had gotten it done, but she didn't really like pick up on it, so I'm not sure if
Yeah.
she realized or if it kind of like flew under the radar and didn't register with her. My parents definitely don't know.
And is there a specific
Yeah.
reason that you kept it from your family? Are they like particularly like religious, or you just thought it would
No, they're
cause
not at all
arguments?
religious. Yeah, it was actually really odd because so my parents aren't religious at all, like
Mm.
at all, like never went to church, never any kind of like sort of thing like that.
Yeah.
Um, they, I've told them well, I didn't have the word for child free, right? But I've told them I don't want kids since I was like 5 years old. They have never argued with me or pushed back or said, oh, like maybe later or
Mm.
never anything like that. And so I think right before I was looking into myself the first time, I mentioned it like kind of casually to my mom, like, hey, I don't want kids. I might be looking into getting this surgery done. And she kind of flipped out, like not in a, crazy way, but she was like, oh my God, no, like you might change your mind. And she was like really against it.
Yeah.
And that really shocked me because she had never expressed any sort of resistance or opinion on it. I mean, I don't know. It kind of threw me for a loop. I wasn't expecting her reaction.
Mm.
Um, and I do feel like I'm a little bit better now, but my parents' approval was is important to me, like what they think of me.
Mm.
And I also feel like they wouldn't necessarily agree with me on this, but at the same time, it's none of their business, and it shouldn't affect what they think of me.
Yeah.
Um, so I was hesitant to tell them, and then so I had my myself in August last year, and like in I think in May or June, my dad started saying like, by the way, I kind of want grandkids, and I'm just like, what? You have
Yeah.
never ever mentioned like, where is this coming from? And it
Oh,
really shocked me. And I
yeah.
think
I
it
was.
was I hit 30, and he was like, "Oh, you're 30 now." Like, okay, but no, I
Mm.
have a cat that can be your grandson. Like, that's all you're getting. No,
Well, I was
it's
gonna
and it
say
just
their reaction might have been because I've heard this from quite a few people, and I think maybe it was somewhat the case with me as well. Is that I think a lot of parents, if their child says that they don't want kids, um, for whatever reason, I think a lot of them assume that it's just going to be a phase. And
yeah,
when their child brings up the fact that they want to make a decision that would make it permanent, then it triggers something in them because then they're like, "Oh no, this is real." And they might be taking the
yeah,
prospect of grandkids away from me. So then they're like, "Oh, it's actually going to affect me now." Whereas before, I think maybe they get the impression of like, it's just a phase, like she's saying it now or he's saying it now, but later on, maybe the biological clock or some other thing, they will change their mind.
hmm
And so I think they sometimes they panic because they see something being taken away from them, even though obviously they can't just take for granted that they're going to have grandkids. um
hmm
but yeah, but obviously I don't know your family, so it could be completely different for them, but that's the vibe I get from quite a lot of people's stories.
So they didn't know that I was taking the decision away. So I don't. I was wondering if it was because they're edging into retirement or like early retirement. So I was like, maybe they're bored. Or,
Mm,
another theory with my partner was they have friends who start having grandkids and
mm,
they kind of, want to keep up with the Joneses or something like that. Yeah, I'm not sure where it came from because, from a purely rational point of view, my
mm,
parents are not kid people. Like, when I was a kid, they're not like, they're fine, but they're not kid people. They have a couple nephews that live like down the street from us. I don't think my dad ever went to a single birthday party in like 15 years.
yeah.
Like, so it's like, why do you? So I kind of joked that if he didn't let it go, I didn't tell him that obviously, but I told my partner and some friends that like if he didn't let it go, I would like buy him one of those dolls that like poops and cries, and I would mail that to him for Christmas,
Yeah,
just
yeah.
to give him like a little taste of his own medicine. But my mom was kind of, I think my mom was less pushy, and
Yeah.
I think it was because she very well knows that women tend to get the shit end of the deal,
Yeah.
as she did herself. So I was able to just say like, look, no, it's not for me. I don't want it, and stay quite polite. Um, because I don't want to ruin the relationship. But I have been biting my tongue quite a bit, and he dropped it since then. But I felt like then, because he had this conversation like a couple months before, I was like, no, I'm not telling you. I actually had not booked the appointments yet when he had this conversation with me,
Mm.
my father. But when I did make the jump, like the decision to actually do it, find a doctor and do it, yeah, they were not told about it, and they might someday, either in an argument or for whatever reason. An argument might be more likely when like, well, I can't have kids anyway, so something like that. But yeah, I don't feel
Yeah.
really the need to tell them. It's medical information, right? It's none of their business.
No, no, I get you. I will bet you money that if it does come out in an argument, it'll be on Christmas Day or something like that, uh, for maximum
Maybe.
effect. Yeah, yeah. So do you have like any regrets at all about getting it or the way you got it or anything like that?
Getting it, no. Definitely happy I got it. The way I got it, a little bit, in the sense that there was definitely a language barrier because, like I
Mm.
said, I had mine in Germany. I'm not a fluent German speaker. I have like about 7 years of school in German, and that was that was like 15 years ago or something.
Mm.
So a little bit rusty. And I feel like some things got lost with the language barrier.
Yeah.
I really wanted it, so I went forward with it. But there were some things that I wasn't hugely comfortable with in terms of questions being answered, um, things like that. And I feel like if I had been a fluent German speaker, it would have been a lot easier, obviously.
Mm.
So my only regret is, I think if I might have had done it in France instead, despite the logistics being annoying, that
Yeah.
might have been just a better way to go, just for my peace of mind, in terms of like trusting the doctor and making sure that he did do the procedure I wanted, and oh, he did it this way, or if there was a complication or something, but he can explain it to me and confirm that everything is okay and stuff like that. That was a little hard in German. And the other thing is kind of tied to that, because so I used to live in France. So obviously when I lived in France, I was also covered by French Social Security. So if I had done it before I moved, I would have not had to pay anything. Not
Mm.
that this cost was fine for me. It didn't like put me in the red or anything, but always nice when you don't have to actually pay $1,000 for a medical thing.
Mm.
And I would have, if I had done that, I would have gotten it sooner. And I think that's the only, if I could have gotten it at like 21 or 22, like I would have definitely. It didn't register as an option back then. Like they wouldn't even give me an IUD in France when I asked at 21, and it
Oh,
didn't cross
really?
my mind. But looking back, yeah, if I could have gotten it at like 18 or something, like straight off the bat, like yeah, I'm sure this is gonna be a birth control forever. Like yeah,
Yeah.
get me into surgery and do it. I would have done it. Um,
Yeah. No,
so yeah,
literally,
actually
when
Reddit
I
helped.
yeah. Oh,
Sorry.
Reddit helped.
Yeah, Reddit helped a lot. Like you it's not something I have, I think, someone I reconnected with since then, that who is also child free, but it's not something you hear a lot of in France, I feel, at least in my circles, I guess. And I'm not super on social media, so yeah, finding Reddit and finding like child free groups, oh, there's actually a name for that, and there's other people who
Mm.
definitely don't ever want kids, and it's not just like, because I was with someone for about 4 years before, and it's a little bit more, oh, kid is like, eh, like, yeah, maybe one. And it's like, and you're lying, right?
Mm.
It's the polite thing to say, kind of, in social company. But, and it's like, I mean, I'm kind of, yeah, I'm curious. Like, if there was a movie that I could watch for like a couple hours and just see what it looked like, like a fast forward of my life with kids, I'd probably pay like $15 and go watch that movie.
Mm.
But when you start thinking about it, like, what does it actually mean to have a kid? It's like, hell no.
Mm.
I'm not doing that. So it's the whole like, okay, like, no, I'm not. I was younger as well, because I was obviously like 6, 7 years ago. But now it's easier also for me to just be like, no, and that's
Mm.
I don't have to say anymore. No, I don't want kids, and I'm fine. I'm fine owning that, and I
Yeah.
think Reddit helped with that.
And do you have any advice for if there's any women watching this who are, thinking of starting the process of getting a sterilization? Do you have any advice for them at all about, you know, questions they should ask or things that they should make sure are in place, or anything about the whole process, in recovery, or how to approach it with your family or friends, like anything? Do you have any advice for anyone watching?
Um, I think the best advice I can give is honestly Reddit is really good. Like if you're looking for a doctor, the child free subreddit, they have a whole list of doctors all over the world who have who are known to be okay with doing this procedure.
Mm.
And they keep the list updated. Like if someone changes their mind or something, like a doctor just suddenly becomes, opposed to it, they will update the list.
Oh, cool.
That's how I found my doctors in France and Germany. And like I said, I didn't go through with it in France because he changed hospitals and it was far
Yeah.
away and stuff. But the guy was open to it. He was very polite. No issues. Like no judgment or anything. Um, and yeah, so it's not just for the US. You can find them pretty much anywhere. So they have a list in their sidebar. If you want to find someone in your country to, that would be open to that without having to jump through hoops or, going to your regular doctor who's like, no, why would you do this? Like, oh no, you'll change your mind. Stuff like
Mm.
that. That's just
Yeah,
really helpful.
yeah, that's cool. If you could send me the link for that afterwards, I'll message you to remind you, but I can put that link in the description, just so any woman that does want to
Mhm.
find a doctor, and they've heard you say this, they can literally just click it in the description. They've got it there.
Yeah, great. I'll send it to you. Actually, it works for men as well. So they have either,
Oh, cool.
for biceps or vasectomies. So they have both.
Okay, nice.
And
Okay, that's
they have a
amazing. Yeah.
sub. Yeah, and then they have a sub for sterilization as well. So it's for both, like it's men and women.
Mm.
And that's more for like the entire sub is dedicated to it. So it's people posting, they have questions or they want advice, or it's their story afterwards or their process during. So you can get a lot of information. Obviously, it's sometimes dependent on the country, but the general
Mm.
like pain after surgery, tips for recovery, things like that doesn't really like it's still a general anesthesia and like a laparoscopic surgery. So that's like you might change the amount you pay or maybe the kinds of but the process is more or less the same. So they're also pretty great for get if you have questions stuff like that. Usually find people to answer you.
Mm.
Like I found someone from Germany from that sub who was able to help like to explain to me what their process was.
Mm.
So that was pretty cool.
Yeah, no, that's amazing. I'll put those links in the description so that anyone can find those. Yeah, I think that's like really good advice, and like something tangible that people can use as part of their process. Um, Thanks so much for coming on, Sarah. It's been like really interesting to like even though I've already recorded one of these, I've learned so much from this one as well, which is one of the reasons I wanted to get women who have had it done in certain slightly different circumstances and in slightly different cultures and stuff like that, just because you know their different experiences will highlight certain things that the other one wouldn't have, if you get what I mean. So yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thank you so much for having me, and I'm glad you learned something too.
Cool. So I'm here with Claire, and we're going to be talking about Claire's experience, going through the process of getting sterilized and what that was like. But this time in Slovakia, which for anyone watching that isn't familiar with global geography, that what like it's in Europe basically, and yeah, well, I don't think there's any more preamble I need to do. So let's just get straight into it. So I want to start by covering like the sort of the whys. So are you able to share with us just a bit about like why you got sterilized? What were your motivations? Um, yeah.
Yeah, sure. So of course there is multiple. There is always multiple reasons. The first one, of course, is the main one. I don't want any children. But what for me was also a difficult question to answer for myself was
Mm.
why exactly sterilization and not other kinds of birth control? Because the one does not mean the other. Um, if you don't get sterilized, it doesn't mean that you will have children. You can choose to be on birth control. You can choose to practice abstinence. There are so many different ways. So that was a question that was quite difficult for me to answer as well. In the end, I did choose sterilization because I was absolutely sure I didn't want to have kids. Also, I did not want to be on birth control for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
There are quite a lot of side effects that I have experienced myself because I was on birth control before. And I just don't really feel like doing that for the rest of my life. And yeah, another reason, maybe a rather strange one, was also a little bit for other people to get them off my backs because I was a little bit tired of all of these people telling me I would change my mind,
Yeah.
people telling me it was, well, yeah, just that I would change my mind and so on. It made me feel a little bit like a walking incubator, like I'm only there waiting for someone to put a baby in me, and then I did my job and I will be miserable. Um, so also a little bit for other people to show them that I was really serious because apparently you're not being taken seriously when you say that as a woman you don't want kids. So that is also one of the reasons why I chose to do it.
Yeah, no, I 100% get that. I think like obviously, both men and women will get that, but I think it is like from my experience and like observing it and talking to people, it does seem like women get more of like they get it more, the nagging of like, oh well, you'll change your mind. I think because there's more of an emphasis on like a biological clock with women, so I think people tend to think, oh well, as she gets older the biological clock will set in, she will go through her phase, etc., and then she'll want kids or something like that. So yeah, I think that's like it's a very common experience, I think, with women. And yeah, I totally get that. So and I always feel a bit I always feel a bit like odd asking this because often people don't want to share. But do you mind sharing like what age you were when you had the procedure?
Yes, my anniversary is coming up. It was the 31st of January last year.
Oh,
So one
nice.
year ago. Yes.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And do you mind sharing what age you were? Just because I think like it's I think when people sort of seek to get a sterilization, um, often the roadblock comes up of like, oh, you're too young, stuff like that. So were you sort of like early 20s, late 20s, anything like that?
Early 20s, yes. So still at a very young age. I mean, I was 25, but I started looking into everything when I was about 19. That's when I had my first consultation. It was still in the Netherlands. And
Mm,
it was a very humiliating experience for me, truly, because the gynecologist just laughed at me and she was like, well, tough luck. I'm not going to do it. And
oh,
5 minutes
really?
later, I was out of that clinic. I was like, yeah, I was like, well, that sucked. Okay, nice.
Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
so I'm assuming you were like living in the Netherlands or something at that time, and so that was like the natural place that you thought, yeah, I'll go there to get a consultation. And you
Yes,
were 19 when you went and got that first consultation?
yes, and truly, I had expected a no, albeit not such a humiliating one.
Yeah.
I also saw it as the start of my documents, so that when I'm 25 or when I'm even older, I can look back, I can show them that document, like, hey, I was already here for a consultation when I was 19, still haven't changed my mind, so can you do the procedure? So just to show them that it was not something that I just came up with one night and decided to do it the
Yeah.
next day. So it was also meant as a start of the medical documents and so on, the logs that I was there and already was thinking about it, but it didn't have to be that humiliating. And the
Yeah.
irony is that I had emailed that clinic before. I had emailed multiple clinics like, hey, I want to do this. I'm below 30. Do I even have a chance? And this was the only clinic that replied, yes, you will have a chance. You can just
Oh,
come to a consultation and we will discuss it. So And that's in combination with that the Netherlands is generally quite a progressive country, I believe.
Yeah.
They're quite positive in
Yeah.
things. They are seen as very tolerant and so on. Yeah, it was really unexpected that I couldn't get it done in the Netherlands.
Yeah, that sucks that like you know that like it's just weird because doctors are supposed to be um like professionals, right? Like they're there to do a
Yes.
job. So to actually you know, like laugh at someone who is at that moment somewhat in your care is yeah, it's kind of out of order. But it's interesting what you were saying about, you know, you kind of went there knowing that it would be a no, but your maybe like your intention was basically just to like start generating evidence, basically, right? Like evidence that this is something that you're committed to, which I think is interesting. Maybe like anyone who's watching this who's in a country where they think they are, or a country or a situation where they think they are going to get a lot of resistance, maybe it's wise to just start the process early so that there is some evidence that you've been trying to do it for a while. um yeah, that's interesting. I think that's smart. um so can you talk us through the process that you've gone through? So you said you first tried in the Netherlands when you were 19, and then you ended up getting it in Slovakia when you were, I think you said 25. So what was
Mhm.
that 6-year period like, and how did you end up getting it in Slovakia?
Well, I did end up moving to the Czech Republic to work, which was unrelated to the procedure. That's
Yeah.
just how it happened. I already knew that I wanted to leave the Netherlands, so the Czech Republic was where I found a job. Basically, I was hired. That's the only
Mm,
reason. And then I decided to just boot up that procedure again to try and get it done somewhere after like a year or so of living there.
mm,
So I went to this clinic and I actually had a very nice consultation there. It was great. And I was actually approved already to such a point that the gynecologist even told me, like, do you want to plan a date right now? Or do you want to wait for a little bit? And at that point, I told him that I would have liked to wait because I've just gone through this entire consultation. I received a lot of information about what
mm.
they're going to do and so on, the price, everything. And I just wanted to let it sink in for a little bit, just to realize that a little bit like, okay, now I actually have this opportunity. Am I going to do it or not? Um, and then, unfortunately, COVID started and they did not do the procedures anymore. And that took actually 2 years. And I just kept emailing them. It was a very nice clinic. I really want to stress that. They were very
Mm.
communicative. They replied to my emails really fast.
And
But the
this,
emails were always negative.
sorry, so this clinic was in the Czech Republic, this one?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
cool, yeah.
Yes. So they kept saying, no, we're not doing it yet. Please check back in a couple of months. And sometimes I would have a little update. I would see that the numbers were going down. I would be vaccinated. So I immediately send them an email like, hey, I got vaccinated. You can be sure I don't have it. Or, oh, back then, that is what they said with the vaccine, of course, that you
Yeah.
cannot get it anymore. Can we do it? And they kept saying, no, no, no. And in the end, they said that they chose not to offer the procedure at all anymore to anyone. So it's not in scope for them anymore.
Oh,
So
oh,
then I
what
was
was
back
that?
to square one.
What they just discontinued it permanently? They were just, oh, we're not doing
Yes,
this. Oh, whoa! Oh, I
yes,
didn't realize that was a thing.
yes. Well, it was actually an IVF clinic, so it was very interesting to go there for a consultation, stand in
Yeah,
the elevator, see all these baby pictures, and the woman at the reception, I remember, she didn't believe that I want to get sterilized.
yeah,
she
yeah, yeah.
she gave me this form to fill in about some partner, and I was like, I don't have a partner because I didn't have one back then. They were like, well, we do need the information of a partner if you want to get a kid. I'm like, oh, I'm here for the opposite, but they didn't understand, I believe.
Yeah,
But nevertheless, the consultation was great, so they do actually offer it, but maybe they don't tell the receptionists. I don't know.
yeah.
Either way, they didn't do it anymore. So back to square one, basically. And then in one of my Facebook groups, someone recommended the clinic in Slovakia, and I just decided to text them and see what was up. Basically, just
Mm.
tell them what I wanted to get done and ask for the procedure. And it was really refreshing. I got all the information back. And the idea that I most got from it is it was a private clinic. And the idea that I got from it was I don't have to convince them, really. That's really great.
Yeah.
They did not reply with anything subjective. It was just like, oh, you're looking to get this done. This is what you need to do. Send us a letter, I believe, with what you want to get done. It has to be signed. It has to be sent on paper via mail. And after that, there was a 30-day mandatory thinking period. And after that, they can start planning that date. So it was all very objective. It was just really like, bring us the money and we will do it for you, which was exactly what I was looking for, really.
And do you mind me asking how much in total it actually was?
So I had to travel for it to Slovakia, obviously. Like the procedure itself, it was 600 euros, and that was including everything. So you had that hospital bed.
Yeah.
I had to stay for like one entire day. I got there at 7 a.m. and I believe I was out at 5 p.m. You got some food, you got some drinks, and so on. So yeah, that was 600 euros. However, I did have to recover, of course, in Slovakia. So I had to get an apartment and everything. There was a 1 week checkup, so I had to stay. So
yeah. So did you I find this interesting because like a lot of people that I've spoken to so far, when they've gotten their procedure, they've often had someone that can like collect them and take them home, or they've done it near their house. So you had to basically like plan an entire trip around this.
yes.
So did you have to like book a hotel or an Airbnb and just stay there? Did you have someone to sort of look after you, or did you do the whole thing on your own?
I really was planning on doing it on my own because who is just going to leave their job and go with you to Slovakia for 1 week, right? I mean, people have to work.
Yeah.
So I was planning on doing it alone, but then thankfully I had some friends that actually came and took care of me that entire week. Like they were saying, no, we're not going to let you do this alone. We're going with you.
Oh, nice.
So I was very happy about that,
Yeah.
actually. And right after the procedure, when I had to get home and the hospital was very far from my Airbnb and the public transport was horrible, I was so glad that my
Yeah.
friends really insisted on coming with me. It was quite difficult indeed. And my recovery was also, I would say, a little bit tougher than what I've read on Facebook, because on Facebook, everyone is saying, well, some people are saying, like, they got a procedure done on Friday and on Monday they're back at work or something like that. I could not stand up straight for the first 3 days. It was quite bad, I would say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I was very happy that my friends were there.
Yeah, and are you able to go into a bit more about the recovery? Because I think a lot of women watching this will be interested in hearing different people's experiences with the recovery. So you were saying that for the first 3 days, you couldn't really stand up. How long was it from getting it done to going back completely to normal, where you can do whatever you want? How long was that period?
Um, I would say about a week. Although on the fifth day, when I didn't have to take my antibiotics anymore, I may have gone out for a couple of drinks and may have gotten quite drunk. May have been jumping
Okay,
on
don't
music.
do that. Anyone
So
anyone who's watching, don't do that.
maybe I did that. But yeah, I would say, but I felt good after that time. So
Yeah.
that is good. It was really weird. Like by the third day, I still couldn't stand up straight. I had to go like bending my back forward,
Yeah.
like some old person,
Yeah, yeah.
all the time. And then on the fourth day, it was suddenly like, oh, I feel okay. Um, so that really worked.
Mm.
But it was quite tough, I would say, those first 3 days at least. After that, of course, there's the longer recovery because recovering internally takes a lot longer. What I had was one of my incisions had gotten
Yeah.
infected, which may have to do with the part that I was partying a little bit. But yeah, so that was a little bit tough. It
Yeah.
was the one in my belly button as well, so it's quite hard to clean as well. And
Yeah, yeah.
I was a little bit scared of that. I found out I didn't have a doctor in the Czech Republic anymore. I didn't have a general practitioner. I was pretty sure I had one, but she went on maternity leave and just never returned and did
Ah.
not bother to inform anyone, I guess. So that was not very pleasant to find out.
Mm.
Like you have this infection and you need to do something with it, and it's like, oh, by the way, you don't have a doctor anymore. Good luck. So that was tough. And as for completely recovery, I don't know. It took quite a while, I would say. After like 8 weeks, I went to the gym again, and I had to stop working out early because my incisions started to hurt. So then I just had to stop that. So even after 8 weeks, which I also didn't expect, because I was reading a lot of experiences and I read everywhere that, yeah, like I said, people were back to work in 3 days. Like over the weekend, they get it
Yeah.
done and then they're back to work. People go also lifting jobs where they just lift. And yeah, it was, I did not expect it to take that long.
Yeah, yeah, no, I can get that. 8 weeks is a while. Um so we've we've sort of we've gone over like, actually I want to actually rewind a bit. So on the actual day of the procedure, what was your experience like there? Were you very nervous? I'm assuming you got put under general anesthetic. That's I'm
Yes.
pretty sure that's always what happens, right? Um, so yeah, what was that whole experience like? The sort of, I mean, obviously you weren't conscious during, so you can't tell us during, but like before and after, how were you feeling? All of that sort of stuff.
I was nervous, and I believe I sent that signed letter with what I want to get done the year before already. So that would be around September 2021, I believe,
Mm,
maybe even earlier. And after that I just had that full approval and I was just waiting for that date. I will be honest, I had my doubts, and sometimes it's a little bit difficult to talk about that in the child-free groups because
yeah,
some people, they just think that you're not really child-free if you're not sterilized or had a
yeah,
vasectomy.
yeah. They're like gatekeeping.
Yes, exactly. So I feel like not everyone is talking about what you're going through when it's really set that
Mm,
you can do it. You have that full freedom. Up until when you experience any kind of resistance, when you have to convince people, it's more like winning the battle rather than getting it done. And only after you get that full approval, you're like, oh, this is what I'm going to do. Okay,
yeah.
great. And I have my doubts about that, truly, like if it was really what I wanted to do. Um, but at some point, I realized, because I was just overthinking about it a lot. At some point, I just realized that I was not unsure about whether to have kids. I was sure I didn't want them. I just wasn't entirely sure about the procedure because
Yeah.
it's so permanent, because you'll be out, you're going to this clinic in a country of which you don't speak the language, and you just have to fully trust them. So when I realized that that was my fear, then I was okay and I decided to go ahead with it anyway.
Mm,
But I was definitely considering all of the possible options, of course. Like, okay, what if I do regret it? And I'm, well, you are quite sure that you will not, otherwise, you will not consider such a procedure. It is, of course, something that will go through your mind. Like, okay, but what if?
mm.
I need to consider all the possible outcomes and effects before I can make a well informed decision. So, this was also something that went through my mind.
Yeah, no,
And
sorry. No, I can 100% get that. Like, like talking about men, I've got a few friends who have either considered getting a vasectomy or have now got one. And, like it's natural just before the procedure. Even if you're like super short all the way up until the procedure, on like the day before or the day, it's like very normal and natural to have doubts, because um it is like this permanent thing you're changing. And even though you can be sure in your reasons why, it's always, doing something permanent is all permanent, or very big, is always, a like, you have this itch in the back of your mind. um Even if it's like 100% the best thing to do, just stepping the barrier from having it in your head that it's something you want to do and actually doing it, like crossing that barrier, it can be difficult even if it's something you're 100% sure. So I think you're probably part of the majority there of people who they have a bit of a shake before the actual thing. And yeah, I don't think it's useful for people in online communities to like gatekeep and say, oh well, you're not like a proper one if you haven't had X Y Z done. Because I mean, I mean, one, that's sort of, I mean, one, it's not true, obviously.
Yeah.
And two, it's just like it's not a healthy environment to establish, to sort of establish this sort of underlying pressure for people to get a medical procedure, because that is what it is at the end of the day. Like, sure, me personally, it is a medical procedure that I would encourage people to get, but at the end of the day, it is still a medical procedure, and it's 100% up to the individual whether they want to get it or not. um but yeah, so I agree with you. I don't like the fact that some people sort of like gatekeep and stuff like that. But okay, cool. So let's go on to like the more social side of stuff. So what was your experience with, so obviously you told some of your friends because they came and helped you recover, right?
Yes.
And you already said that they were, very supportive. What was your like wider experience with friends and family, or or did you tell them at all? Maybe your family and other friends don't know, but yeah, like who did you choose to tell, and like what were their reactions?
I told my closest friend about it, my closest friends, and also my parents. I felt like I just had to tell them that. They already knew that I wanted to get it done. They knew when I was 19 that I would be going to the gynecologist, and I would ask them exactly that. My
Mm,
parents were already aware. So their reactions were okay. Of course, the process took years before I finally got it done. So they were already kind of getting used to the idea that it's just not going to happen having
mm,
kids for me. And I feel like they accepted it. So that is good. Um, Apart from that, I haven't told a lot of people. It's just not a subject that really comes up, you
mm.
know. I don't discuss birth control with, because it's some kind of birth control, what you could
Yeah, yeah,
say it as such. I don't really discuss that with many people.
yeah, yeah.
So
Just for the banter.
yes, exactly. It's not
Yeah,
something that really comes up like that. But
yeah,
I am
yeah.
telling people that I don't want to have kids whenever the subject comes up, of course. But
Mm.
I think that's quite understood. And my environment consists of people around my age. So at this age, I find that a lot of people don't even think about kids yet. So they fully agree with me at this point that they also do not want kids.
Yeah, yeah,
Although it might be not yet. And that is what they tell me. I'm not assuming the same way people assume about me, like, oh,
yeah,
she
yeah,
says not yet. But yeah, they also say they don't want any kids yet,
yeah, yeah.
maybe
No,
in the
no, I
future.
I get what you mean. And yeah, I mean, I do think there is truth to the fact that that will change. It is true that some people go through phases, of not wanting or wanting and then not wanting again or something like that. But obviously, it's not true for every case. It wasn't true for you, and it's not true for many other people. But yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if like in a few years, like at least a few of the people that you're surrounded by then shift to wanting kids, because it is something that happens. It's happened to people I know, who were very sure they didn't want kids, and then it sort of changes. Um, but yeah, so what you were saying before, like, just before the procedure, you were sort of having, sort of, I don't know if you want to put it like that, but like second thoughts or something like that. And or like, would I regret
Yes.
it, etc. So looking back on it now, do you have any regrets at all?
No.
Nice.
No,
And
I'm very happy.
do you have any regrets at all about how, not that you got it, but how you got it? Do you have any regrets about how the process went? Like, if you went back and could do it, and had to do it again, would you do it any differently?
Um, I don't know because yes, there were some things that I would like to have happened differently. The clinic had quite some lack of communication because it's in a different country.
Yeah,
But um, also, for example, no one told me whether the procedure had happened correctly. No one told me if they found anything foreign or anything um, like some tumors or whatever.
yeah,
Anything bad while they're looking in there. So I think I would have liked that confirmation at least, like, hey, everything went well. We didn't
yeah,
find anything strange or healthy. Congratulations. I didn't get that. So that is quite a shame, I would say. And also, I feel like I wasn't that well informed. Like I really had to ask them what kind of sterilization is going to be. Is going to be, are they going to take out the tubes? Are they going to tie them? Are you going to put clips on them? What are you going to do there? And I really had to ask that myself.
Mm.
Also, when I had to sign the documents in the clinic, I had 3 languages to choose from. I had Hungarian, Polish, and German. None of those languages I speak. So, and then, and then I do speak German a little bit because I'm from the Netherlands. But then they were rushing me. They were like, "Okay, hurry up a little bit with with signing those documents, will you? Because the doctor is waiting." So, yeah, that was also interesting. Thankfully I had done enough research beforehand. I did so
Yeah.
much research. I could do the procedure on myself if general anesthesia hadn't been needed.
Yeah.
So it was all fine, and the environment was still very relaxed. But those are the things that I wouldn't like, that I would have liked to be different. However, I also, when you're looking for sterilization, you're just happy when you find that unicorn clinic that is actually offering it, willing to do it, and so
Yeah.
on. So I also felt like I didn't really have a choice. So
Yeah.
I would probably have come down to choosing the same clinic if I had to do it again.
Yeah. And sorry, I didn't ask before. Which type of sterilization did you get?
They sealed it with an electric current.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool. And would you, if someone is watching this, and they're thinking about going through the process themselves, would you have any advice for them?
Um, Start early, definitely.
Mm.
Also, of course, consider all the outcomes, even if it's going to be regret, even if I'm just going to talk after usual parents here, but even if you're going to get a partner who does want kids, consider all of those possible outcomes. But also there is this post-tubal ligation syndrome that some women have. Personally, my periods were horrible after the procedure for a couple of months. Consider whether you really want to do that. For me, I didn't just join Facebook groups for child-free people, but also for people who have had a self-mastectomy in general, just so you could also read their experience
Yeah.
on these syndromes and the after effects and so on. Because with child-free, I still feel like there is always this undertone that is like, because you don't want kids and so on. And sometimes I feel like people are sometimes focusing more on that, solidifying that decision, than on the actual after effects that are
Mm.
there. So just read on that, and also consider joining those groups and reading experience of people who have had children and then did a procedure, because in the end it's the actual same. You both underwent the procedure.
Mm.
So I would say that, and also, yeah, really consider that it could go wrong. There is always risks involved and so on. Yeah, that is the advice that I would give people,
Mm.
really.
Yeah, and if you still have links to those groups that you were mentioning, if you're able to send those to me, that would be amazing, and I can put them in the description. And
Yes,
then
sure.
people watching the video, they can just click on the link. They're straight there, and it's a lot easier for them. That would be amazing. Well, thanks so much, Claire, for like sharing your story and coming on. It's been really nice to talk to you.
You're welcome.